Con-goers and cosplayers. What are your cringiest and creepiest con experiences? Story 1 year ago, my wife and I were at a smaller comic convention in Toronto. We were walking around the vendor section and came to a custom chainmail shop, staffed by a single girl, probably 17 to 18, outfitted in leather shorts and a chainmail bra. I assume whoever else was working the booth with her left for a bit. Anyways, it was just a single table and the backdrop behind her. A significantly older, very off-putting man was standing at her table, making bad small talk, while taking multiple photos of the clearly weirded out girl. She looked over at us and was practically screaming for help with her eyes. My wife pushed over to the table and started talking and asking her product-related questions, and the dude wandered off after a couple of minutes. At the same con, I left my wife alone for a bit, and she ended up cornering a booth, trying to be as polite as possible, while a random guy explained to her his theories of how the Joker is personification of pure chaos, and how he would just stab someone in the neck, because he could. My tip for any guys looking to make small talk with random girls at a convention: don't lead with how your favorite comic character is awesome, because he can murder anyone he wants at any time. Story 2, I went to my first ever convention at the age of 13. I didn't dress up or anything, I just wanted to take pictures of good cosplayers. My friend and I spotted a very handsome and flawless Maroka cosplayer. Inuyasha was my favorite anime at the time. I was ecstatic, and my friend pushed me in his direction to take a picture with him. I scooted close to him, and staying true to character, he groped it was the best day of my life. Years later, I realized how creepy it is to be 13, groped by a 20-year-old, and have it be the highlight of my middle school days. Edit middle school, not middle class, LMAO. Story 3, creepiest by far, was one of my first conventions. I was about 15 years. I cosplayed as Conan for Naruto, and boy, was a good job. I was posing for a photo with some people when this guy came up to me and explained how neat he thought the costume was and how well I pulled it off. Thanks, you want a picture too? Sure. You want a link to my DeviantArt? It's broken. Then when I let him know I need to go this way to not so subtly escape, he followed. Well, I'm going this way too. It took me 10 minutes to work out how to separate myself from this creep and realized we had walked to the food court, where the toilets are. I politely excused myself, only to receive what would have to be the most disgusting response. Oh, that's cool. They'll come with him. 15, you're a guy. This is a women's bathroom. No, this for me was some time ago, and I understood soon after that I handled the situation poorly. Whether he meant to or not, he gave me the creep, so that's why I shared spelling grammar image for clarification. Story 4, last year, my then-fiancée cosplayed as Kamala Khan. This one really creepy guy approached us and started up a conversation with her about how great her costume was. Then he spent about 10 minutes talking her ear off about all the people that he wanted Kamala Khan to have within the comics. Dude, we don't care if you think that seeing her with Gwenpool or Wolverine would be hot. It's pretty creepy. He asked her who she wanted to see have with Kamala, which got the response, no one. She's 16, meaning the character, not the fiancé. That didn't really stop him, though. We ended up having to walk away from him mid-sentence because he wasn't getting the hint. Edit the ending and some clarification. Story 5, I've only been to one convention, but here goes. Cringiest moment was during the cosplay competition. There was a couple that was dressed as Toph and Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. The frankly annoying host announced to the audience that Zuko has an important question to ask his girlfriend. Apparently, it's a thing to propose during the competition, so they do their little show. Toph throws a foam rock at Zuko, and then they just stand there awkwardly. The guy gets cold feet or whatever, because like 2 minutes pass where it's not clear what's going to happen. They walk off stage. Then the girl comes back and stands there for a few seconds. Then goes away again. Zuko comes back and stands there. The host doesn't know what to say. She kind of ignores him and talks about how mean it is to throw rocks at your boyfriend. Zuko gets the hint and walks off. Then the host goes, oh, looks like he changed his mind. Maybe we'll get a proposal next year. Other highlights include a cosplayer making a very serious 15-minute speech about how cosplaying changes life and everybody should follow their dreams. See some spelling and some details. Story 6, this happened just last year. Actually, me and my girlfriend were cosplaying Blitz and IQ from Rainbow Six Siege at a relatively small con. Things were fantastic at the start. Lots of, oh hey guys, can I get a picture? Just felt pretty good to get some recognition. We had worked really hard on the costumes and even made Blitz's flash shield with working lights. A few hours in, and some guy in a costume I didn't recognize shouts, Blitz, I need to fight you. Sure, dude, well posed for some fight pictures, no big deal. Well, he didn't really grasp the concept of posing and started actually punching my shield, which was made of some relatively thin pegboard material. And the view slot was just plastic. I told him to tone it down and just put his fist against it, so it looked like he was hitting it in the picture. His response, it's a shield, dude. I tell I'll be fine. And punches the plastic right out of the shield. I'm pissed. My girlfriend is pissed. The dude is ecstatic. He throws up his fists and battle cries before running off. You dude, oh god, I will never forget this one. Happened at a particularly large anime convention. Listen to two 20-somethings very awkwardly have this conversation on a shuttle bus from the convention center back to our hotel at night. There's a skinny guy wearing these bizarre light-up shutter shades. B is a moderately attractive girl with light-up rings on her fingers and an unrecognizable cosplay. And oh my god, I'm so freaking lit right now. B, I've been lit since at least 10:30 this morning. Oh wow, you go hard. Where'd you find beer that early? B looks at A incredulously seriously. Just go to a liquor store and laughs awkwardly high. Silence for a few minutes. So have you gotten lit every day of the con so far? B, oh yeah, pretty much every con I go to, me and my crew just get totally lit. Another weird silence. Say, you should come back to my room. There's going to be a huge party later. B, sounds cool. I'll tell my friends. Should I bring anything? A, could you bring some of that fun juice? B, looking confused but laughing awkwardly low. What? A, could you bring some of those beers? In scene, just Crim City. Also, this conversation was super loud on a coach bus packed full of people. Story 7 volunteer for large cons for 15 years. Was on break talking to a friend cosplaying as Sailor Mars. She's an attractive girl and was sitting with myself in a con chair for a different con when a young male shuffled up. He opened by complimenting her costume. He then followed up with, I've fantasized about you since I was 13. I face-palmed, and there was a pause, and he just sort of shuffled away. Sailor Mars continued on our original conversation. I can only imagine the horrors she has had to put up with. Story 8 one time, I was cosplaying as Felicia from Darkstalkers, a character who is a cat girl. This girl at a con just ran up out of nowhere, screaming Glomp the Nico as she launched herself at me and practically tackled me. That she stood there hugging me without permission as I tried to extricate myself, and she stank really, really badly. Also, same con and costume. Some obese guy who was watching a door to check for badges told me I couldn't come in until I hugged him. Story 9 teenage homestuck cosplayers laying in the middle of the walkways outright dry and making out. When they were asked to move, they made a huge fit about it, accusing the staff of being homophobic. Story 10, some Deadpool cosplayer was running around doing silly poses and trying to be witty and charming until he tripped in front of a large crowd and landed pretty hard on his knee. It was obvious he was hurt, so someone went to help him, and he screams off as you can see tears soaking through his mask. Full-grown man, jumping around in the cringiest attempt at being Deadpool, smashes his knee, lashes out, and cries. Story 11 was dragged to a pony con by a friend who promised it would be fun. I don't even like My Little Pony. But I went anyway. We stayed at the hotel that the con was being hosted at, and the first day that we arrived, we were waiting in the lobby when suddenly a random guy throws a pony toy in through the lobby doors. He then proceeds to run inside after it and squat into some ninja pose to retrieve it. He is wearing a free hug shirt. His friend follows him and equally as nerdy. They spot us across the lobby and realize we are there for the con. Friend was in cosplay. They walk over, no joke, pretending to be robots and say, hey ladies, and point to their free hug shirt. I look at my friend like, no way am I hugging these greasy boys, and she just laughs and hugs them. I stand firmly with my arms crossed. She gives me the come on, don't be in look, so I give in and hug them. They both hug me soul-crushingly tight, then leave. They had that lingering shitty pants smell on top of rodent-killing B. Oh, as they were walking away, I heard one of them say, dude, her titties felt so soft against my chest. It's safe to say the rest of the con was too. Story 12, at PAX Prime, this past summer my daughter and I were dressed as Link and Zelda. A man dressed as Ganon approached my daughter, who in her Zelda outfit looked to be about 17 to 18, but she was only 14, and told her, so, why don't you? And I head to my castle, while my buddies take care of the old lady. Sadly, my sword wasn't quite sharp enough to bisect him. Story 13, most cons happen in very urban areas. I always cringe when I am making the long walk from parking lot to convention center in costume, because the random suited people on the street are usually just minding their own business when they see me, an adult dressed as a Jedi, going about my own way. It's definitely embarrassing having people see you dressed up with no context. But it's all okay once you make it into the building and everyone already knows what to expect. The cringiest thing I've seen another person do was go on stage for a costume contest and make a joke that nobody got in the entire audience of hundreds of people. There was dead silence for a solid 15 seconds or so. Then the room filled with hesitant sympathy chuckles. Creepiest con experience was when some guy tried to grab my little stepbrother's hand and walk off with him. Story 14, I sell comics at conventions and have seen a lot of really cringy stuff. The ones that make me cringe the most are the furries. There's always a group of them, and while they stick to their own little group, they constantly feel the need to each other in the main hall. There's also those groups, usually girls, who constantly run around. like sprinting, and when they see someone they know, they jump on them, glomping, or whatever that you call it. All I know is that whatever it is, it annoys me. I always feel bad for the cosplaying ladies. I've become good friends with many of them since we all go to the same cons all the time, and my mom, who helps with the business, loves to go talk to them at panels about sewing and stuff. They get creeped on so much, especially the ones with very large breasts, like one girl who has done some modeling and does cosplaying for a living now. People can't just take pictures. They always try to, just because you post a picture online doesn't mean you're giving permission for people to just feel you up whenever they want. I've seen some funny stuff too, though. I saw two people dressed as the Fete walk up to each other. One took off their helmet and was a rather attractive girl. The other took off their helmet and had a horse head on under it. The girl grabbed the horse head and pulled that off, and as was Deadpool, I laughed pretty hard. Story 15, not as bad as most of these stories, but this happened at a con last year. Had a 6'tall dude dressed as an extremely accurate Dark Knight. Joker glanced down my dress and say, "Well, hello, beautiful," right by my ear in a just as accurate voice. I have a strong stomach for scary, but Jiminy Christmas that creeped the ever-loving out of me. Obligatory wow. This blew up. Edit, I dug up the business card he gave me, and he has a gig salad page. I guess there's a market for Joker impersonators to perform at events. Happy birthday, Timmy. Want to see a magic trick? Story 16, I used to sell art in the artist alley at local cons, and I never got to walk around too much since I had to watch over my table. But the people who come up to you could be plenty creepy and cringy. I had one lady come up to me while I was drawing and go on a rant about how this con would never be as good as Dragon Con, which honestly, who cares? She was also flinging spittle all over my drawing with apparently zero awareness. Also, women artists at the tables near me. Always having to fend off creepy lurky dudes who just won't go away, it's sad. Story 17, I went once and saw a guy dressed as Tennant's doctor, and these teenage girls walked by in Sailor Moon outfits, and he looked at them and said, "Oh yeah, I do like to be bigger on their insides." It was the worst. Edit clarified the girls were pretty young looking. Story 18, well, I saw two furries in full costume laying on a bench in the hotel lobby caressing each other so. Edit, I should say that most furries are actually really cool people and fursuits are not made for, but in rare cases there are bad apples who act weird. Story 19, alright, I go to about 3 to 4 cons a year, and I have never met a single creep. Except in a random small con I've never been to before. I was there with my friend, and he's had about 50 bathroom breaks, and it looks like there's no sign of stopping. So I'm waiting outside the men's bathroom dressed up in a Hamura Akemi cosplay. That's on this about 411, 350 pounds dude with a scraggly beard, which is bald spots, shows up. I'm standing in front of the men's bathroom, just generally disinterested because it's the bathroom. What else is there to do? I try to ignore his presence by staring at my phone, but there's absolutely no one around, and this is smiling at me. As I switch off a Reddit thread, that's when it happened. He says hi. His voice was incredibly grating, high-pitched, and overall unpleasant. I reluctantly greet him back, and he fires back with, "I see you're cosplaying Hamura. I love her. She's like my waifu. I want to marry her." Like, first of all, I just met you. Second of all, she's like 14, you sick. He continues this waifuism for a while before changing the target of his compliments from Hamura to me. He starts calling me pretty, beautiful, etc., and every compliment stung more than the last. I was pretty done with him, so I try to cut it short and say I need to meet up with a friend, start walking away, and he grabs my hand. I freak out a little and turn around. He shoots back at me. I want to meet her too. This guy's legit hopeless. I abandon hope and tell him to go on ahead. A flimsy excuse looking back, and he tells me he's willing to wait. Another eternity passes while I wait for my friend to emerge from the men's bathroom. The entire time was filled with his waifuism and general praising, which did not come off as flattering. My friend finally emerges, and I introduce the two reluctantly and say we really got to be going without him. He yells, "Stop." We look back at him, and he's reaching into his pants and whips out his phone. He fiddles with it for a bit and turns the screen towards me and asks for my number. I'm basically done with him, so I just straight up say no and push his phone back toward him. He stares at his screen and tilts his head, acting all confused. Then he turns his phone screen right back toward me, acting as if I just forgot to give him my number. I'm sufficiently creeped out, so I just say it, grab my friend, and make a solid brisk walk away because you can't dash through a crowded hallway. Thankfully, we never saw him again, and he's now somewhere out there worshipping Hamura. Story 20, I was standing in the artist's alley talking to some people at a table about the character I was dressed as, when some crazy person literally jumped on me from behind, shrieking something about pretty cosplay. Then he grabbed and ran away, making bizarre noises. It was rather unsettling and pissed me off considerably. Story 21, the cringiest thing and creepiest things I've ever seen as a con actually both happened at a local convention held at university. The cringiest one was a guy participating in a cosplay contest as his original steampunk character, which would have probably been fine on its own if he didn't answer all of the judges' questions on stage awkwardly in character. The creepiest thing I saw requires some context. When we were at this same contest, the winner was a guy who was clearly in his 30s or 40s doing his own OC, which was a samurai with a mask covering his face. He talked to my girlfriend and complimented her on her outfit, and he seemed really nice every time we talked to him. But a day after the convention, we found out that they revoked his award because they found he was harassing young girls earlier that night and registered for the convention under a fake name. It was a local convention, so most of the people there knew each other, but no one had any idea who this guy was. Story 22, I've been pretty lucky, especially as a chick cosplaying Poison Ivy, which is admittedly a pretty sexy costume. Corset, heels, etc. No super hardcore harassment. The worst things I've experienced are men getting really close or try and put their hands on inappropriate areas during requested photos. Like, I'm okay with a photo, but no, you can't put your hands on my... I've also had people ask me to leave my boyfriend and come with them, even if only for a night. Cringe, dude, definitely no. Story 23 for me, it was last year at the Sydney Smash Anime Convention. I saw the Dark Magician Girl figure where you can see the panty shot at a stall, and this dude was just hovering it for ages and looking at it in different angles. Then started speaking to me about the underwear she was wearing, then went off about hentai. Wasn't trolling, this was a genuine conversation starter for this guy. Story 24, holy, just thinking about this experience makes my shrivel, but sharing cringy moments is my passion. So let's go. So I was cosplaying Gremlin D, VA at Sydney Smash when this photography dude who's taken photos of me earlier on the day approaches me with the MNT, Duke and cracks a joke about D, VA, and the good OL classic gamer drink, and tells me about this challenge he made up for himself to take a sip for every D, VA cosplayer he sees. He insists that because I'm Gremlin D, VA, logically he should chug an entire can upon sighting me. I'm like, but then he drops it on me that he wants me to watch him do it whilst he films it. My innards collapse upon themselves with the force of the cringe, but being the nice, giving person, I agree to the act like a chump. He gives the camera to my sister who's cosplaying May and proceeds to awkwardly hork down the dew in audible gulps. But the thing is, it takes some time to chug a 250 milliliters can of soda if you are a scrawny nerd. So cue about 15 seconds worth of me attempting to act impressed with some incredibly cringy faces and gestures whilst inside him like. The cherry on top is when he finally finishes. I blurt out now, that's what I call a new high score in that squeaky D VA voice, and I do this dumb Nerf gun pose toward the camera woman, my own sister. I wanted to die. I still think about that moment late at night and experience visceral physical pain. It haunts me. Story 25, the creepiest thing I ever saw was a sexy gender-bend Batman, mind you. Not a Batgirl or Batwoman, which wasn't the problem that was asked to pose for a picture with his family's child. Kid was maybe 6 or 7, and the pose the parents wanted, the kid on the ground with Batman's foot on him like he was pinned down, ended up looking like pedo BDSM. Story 26, I sell some original comics, and usually have a table. But the story that sticks out to me is that at a con, there was a kid who was about 14 and pretty nerdy. He went on and on to us about a vendor having ice cream planets. I guess they were in Firefly. These were of ice cream on the end of a string that you had to eat while holding it up in the air. He made a point every time he had one to walk past our table, making eye contact with us as he tried to eat this ice cream that was on a string. Story 27, many years ago. I went to a con dressed in a Babylon 5PS I-Core uniform. I got cornered in an autograph line by the stereotypical creepy nasal voice Trekkie who went on and on and on and on about all the reasons why DS9 was totally way better than B5 blah 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 etc. No amount of that's your opinion, and I respect that. I happen to prefer B5, would shut him up. Dude was mortally offended that I liked one show better than another. Thank heaven my friend showed up shortly thereafter and saved me from having to listen to the guy any further. Story 28, not just an attendee, but a worker too. I do security for some Comic-Cons here in the UK, usually the front of house. While you'll talk to a few people, it'll talk to a few thousand. For me, the cringiest attendees are ones that take the character they're cosplaying as way too seriously. Going up to security officers and trying to roleplay with them. Bear in mind, a lot of the team is 40-something men that hate this stuff and are only here for the paycheck. They fully expect us to understand all the fandoms and get confused or even annoyed that I don't know niche character from weird anime. But the worst was when I had to do Q control for a popular YouTube stan, Rooster Teeth, and not sure how popular they are. I don't know who they are. Kids being upset and angry they can't meet their idols is fine. I get that. This one kid had a full mental breakdown in front of me. I say kid, he was more like 15, 16, stomping up and down in tears. yelling about how unfair it was he couldn't go in. He most likely had some conditions, but it was a sight to behold, and one that put me off working at Comic-Cons for a while. Creepiest was the old guy we handed to the police for taking candid photographs of teenage cosplayers. Girls, cosplay all you want, but please know there are perverts out there, and they will take upskirt photos of you when you're in your skimpy schoolgirl costume. Guys too, but it's almost always creeps going after female minors. Stay safe. We recommend you wear plain black shorts under those skirts. We also confiscated a wooden plank with 6-inch long rusty nails hammered because the guy in plain clothes said it was a part of his costume. I don't think so. Story 29, one of the cringiest things I've seen happen during Small Con, when a bunch of friends and I were hanging out in an area with some couches, just chatting and reading bad fanfiction together as you do. We'd been sitting there for a while when a guy and two girls walked up and stopped a few meters in front of us. One of the girls was dressed in a bra harness that went around her torso and hips and in between her legs, the world's shortest leather skirt, a gag, stripper heels, some kind of animal paws, and a collar with a leash, no underwear, nothing else. The guy talked with the other girl for a while before he grabbed the first girl's leash and dragged her off to somewhere. Creepiest was probably the time a legit neck beer hit on me or something. What he actually wanted when I was 13. It was raining, and my cosplay, a very covering-made uniform, was half-drenched. I was standing in line at McDonald's when a guy in front of me turned around and in baby speech asked if the little kitty is wet, which wouldn't have been all that creepy if he hadn't easily been 40 centimeters taller than me and 20 years old with the looks of a senior hobo. Story 30 cringiest. My husband cosplayed as Darth Vader around the time EP7 came out. He was very popular because he's 6'4" and built like a linebacker. Lots of requests for pictures. This guy who looked like he lived in his mother's basement came up dressed as a Jedi. And by Jedi, I mean he was wearing a bathrobe and carrying an expensive-looking lightsaber prop. He wanted to be recorded fighting Darth Vader. So he hands me his camera, didn't even ask, takes a stance, and proceeds to have an aggressive lightsaber duel with my husband. Where most people took about 15 seconds to get their poses photographed, this guy dueled for about 2 minutes. My stomach was in knots the whole time from the awkwardness. Darth husband eventually had to force choke him to end it. Story 31, a massive and amazingly plotted out Sailor Moon panel was completely derailed by these two kids. They were about 10 and 12, a little young considering it was way late in the night. But it wasn't an adult panel, so they got in. Constant barrage of questions. Anytime they started talking, it led to a 5-minute rant on how their classmates at school don't understand what being an otaku is like. The panelist was clearly flustered, but wasn't sure what to do about this. So she answered them and let them go on. She got to cover maybe 20 of her panel. About half of the room of 70-ish people left because it was just too much. Story 32, I was dressed in a reboot Star Trek Uhura costume. A man in a uniform from the original movies comes up and asks to take a picture with me. I say yes. He takes a normal picture, and then before I could do anything, he grabs my leg and throws it over himself. This uniform was short enough that my underwear was definitely visible in that pic. He thanked me and sped off while my dickhole ex laughed about the whole thing. It was so fast I didn't even react until Head left. It was a drive-by. Story 33, our first year tabling in the Artist's Alley and Anime Con. There was this girl, probably 15 to 16, that wouldn't leave us alone. If you've ever tabled at a con or hung out with Artist's Alley people, you know the type uninterested in what you're selling, just happy to have a captive audience so that they can drone on and on about their project that they're never actually going to write down, but it's all there in their head. Will never take the hint that it's time to leave. She saw that we did commissions, and so she asked if we did NSFW commissions. My artist isn't super comfortable drawing that kind of material, and she clearly looked underage, so we said no. She proceeded to keep needling us about it and seemed to notice that it made us uncomfortable. Well, this is clearly a reaction, which is all she's after. So she keeps on requesting increasingly up commissions that we do our best to ignore while we desperately try to start a conversation with anybody else that will come within 10 feet of our table. By the time she's done, she has decided she RELY wants my artist friend to draw her the kid from Grave of the Fireflies Each Other, and also one of them is eating the other one's intestines. Eventually she decided she was bored and left. What makes this interaction stick out from other encounters with booth barnacles for me is the guy that was with her. Around the same age, never said a word the whole time, but I could see in his eyes that he was deeply embarrassed by this girl's behavior and really just wanted to leave. I could just read the saddest short story in that kid's expression head found the one girl in his social circle that was into anime, and he was too socially awkward to realize that just because someone's into the same geeky as you doesn't mean that they're not going to be absolutely insufferable to be around. In retrospect, I really want to take that young man aside and just say, I don't know you, I don't know your life, but I'm just going to say right now, you could do better, run. Story 34. A lot of cons now promote inclusiveness. You should cosplay as who you want, etc. My husband and I were walking around, and he saw a girl wearing a great costume. She was with a group of people. He said, "Oh, that's really great for whatever reason." The group openly mocked him, like full-on mocking, mimicking his words. Everything. I'd get it if they were teens, but everyone, there was at least 25. My husband and I are in our 30s. Seriously, what? Story 35. I once had a con-goer kind of grab me whilst I was in a set of cosplay armor. I mean, I'm not a skittish person, but she didn't let go and got a bit gropey. I had to tell her to let go, which she didn't do at first, and I must confess I got pretty angry with her as I could hear one of my armor pieces buckling. I ended up taking her to one side and saying to her it's unacceptable just to walk up to someone and grab them without asking. I asked if she would find it okay if a random guy came up and grabbed her, and she answered yeah, but that's not the same. Is that I can't exactly describe it, but her tone very much added, because I'm really pretty, so people don't usually mind. I told her that I didn't think it made any difference. You can't just people because you feel like it. Almost immediately, she flew into a bit of a tantrum, not wanting to listen to her response. I just had to tell her not to speak to me for the rest of the event. It's weird because even in this thread, you always hear these stories, and they're often about guys who creep on women. As a guy, I never believed that this would happen in reverse. But I guess that's just because it goes against the stereotype. It actually really bothered me, much more than I would ever have thought. And I sympathize with people who have to deal with this a lot. I'm fortunate in that having attended many events, this has only happened twice. And the other incident was more of an innocent misunderstanding. So to sum up, cosplay isn't consent, and groping isn't okay irrespective of gender. Story 36. The amount of people who feel like it's okay to just touch and grab you in costume is pretty nuts. I've never personally worn a sexy costume either. But fans of your character almost act like they own you. The amount of people that suddenly think it's okay to drag you around, grab your props, get pissed if you don't have time to photo is weird. There's always the creepy dudes that want to know what you're wearing under that armor, or just feel the need to tell you that they're going to fantasize about you. I think the most uncomfortable experience for me wasn't even this drunk dude came up to me and asked if my body armor was real. No, dude, it's literally made out of foam. So it won't hurt if I do this. And he punches me in the super hard. Yes, you walking weaponized douchebag. That hurts. I'm a small woman. Eventually, this dude's friend physically picked him up and dragged him away after my friend started yelling. I was too winded to even react. Fortunately, I was able to cover up the damage to my armor with fake battle damage. But still, don't punch people. Story 37. This is more con-related than con-experienced. But there's a woman in a costuming group that I'm in who vehemently believes that if you wear a sexy costume to a convention, you have to just be okay with getting groped at some point, because you're wearing a sexy costume, so obviously you're going to get groped. No, that's not how consent works. I will happily agree that if I wear a sexy costume, chances are that I'm going to get jacked off to, but as long as it happens later when I'm not around, that's 100% fine. I do not, however, have to just accept getting touched inappropriately just because I'm wearing a leotard. Story 38. We were selling at a pretty busy con, but things slowed down around the time of a big event, as they do. This guy who had walked past our booth earlier stopped back by. He was obviously into steampunk, which is what we sell, because had made his own mechanical arm with duct tape and gadgets and a bracer. We complimented his components, made general chit-chat while he glanced at our wares. He noticed we have some Doctor Who and Star Wars watches. So he spent the next 35 minutes telling us all about his fanfiction where his character is the Doctor on his 14th generation. How he uses the TARDIS to go into the Star Wars universe at various times, to fix this or that, goes into a steampunk realm, which is where his gadgets came from, then crosses into a series I didn't recognize, and may at one point have landed on Serenity and given advice to Captain Mal. Because no one else was around, we were at his mercy. Finally, people started coming back to the vendor room, and we made some excuse to get him to move along. TLDR, please make sure someone is actually interested in your fanfic before you talk at them about it at length. Story 39. I went as Star-Lord to Comic-Con this past year, and in general, things were pretty great. The one weird moment was when I was waiting in line to get something autographed, and this girl who was like 13 turns to me and says, "Hey, our characters are engaged. Can I get a picture with you?" Which, totally innocuous. It's just weird because I was 28 at the time and was immediately thinking someone was going to ask me to take a seat and have a very serious talk. In general, though, that's about as weird as anything has gotten when I've done cosplay. People are mostly really cool and get in the spirit of it. Story 40. Every Comic-Con in Arizona, at least one guy will go as Pyramid Head, and whoever I'm going with will always take pictures with him. One year, he brought 2 of the Silent Hill nurses with him, and for some reason everyone would avoid the trio. My family approached him to ask for a picture, which he allowed. However, when we got close, my little sister looked up to him. She has never been to Comic-Con nor seen Pyramid Head before, and asked, "Why does your head look like stairs for little people?" Pyramid Head broke down laughing, and afterwards we couldn't even take the picture.